right. So welcome everybody to Spiritual Experiencers. And my name is Catherine. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I'm so happy to be here tonight with all of you. I'm just so excited about our speaker tonight. We have a little common bond between us, but I will share that with you later. But anyway, she's going to be sharing about her incredible NDE story and some really magical things that have happened throughout her life after the NDE too. And it's so cool. I just can't wait to hear the whole story because I've only heard a short version of it. So I'm here with all of you hearing this for the first time also. So I want to welcome Ellyn Dye. And so welcome, Ellyn. I'm going to bring you in. So nice to have you here. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
So great to have you. So, so what I usually ask is just, start where you're comfortable. If it was in childhood or anything happened then that helped you along your journey to understand things, you can, if you want to share about that, you can too. But if it started during your NDE, that's fine too. However you want to share. We're all
Okay.
ears.
All right.
All right.
And Catherine mentioned about questions later. I love to do questions because so often somebody asks me a question that will bring back memories and information that I've forgotten from my NDE. So I love questions. So, make a list.
Yes.
And I'll be here as long as you want to ask questions.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
As a comedian once said, I started out as a child. I had, what I found actually is that a lot of light workers and seekers tended to have difficult childhoods. And who knows whether, I guess that's part of the prep or something. But I was adopted as an infant, and I grew up in Washington, D.C., and had a relatively normal childhood, I guess. But one of my earliest memories was sitting in my bed at night when I was about 5 or 6, maybe 7, somewhere around there, and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And I said, "How could you leave me alone with these people?" And, to this day, I'm not really sure who I was talking to. Whether it was God or the ETs or my higher self or whatever. And I wasn't quite sure whether I was talking about my family or just humans in general. Because I really, even at a young age, didn't feel like I belonged here or that I fit in.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 12, my adoptive mother died of cancer. And the night that she died, she was in the hospital, and she'd been in the hospital for a while. And my grandmother was taking care of my brother and me. And I had gone to bed, and I woke up, and my mother was standing at the bottom of my bed, and, brightly lit, but very solid, it seemed to me, just like normal, like a real person. And she said everything was going to be all right, and she loved me. She'd be watching over me, but it was time to go. And she disappeared. So I got up and I walked out into the living room, and I told my grandmother that my mother had just died. And, my grandmother burst into tears and said, "Oh no, she's still, she's still here." And then the phone rang, and my father called from the hospital to say that my mother had passed. So I think at the age of 12, I really, really consciously, thanks to my adoptive mother, had my feet planted firmly on the path of a seeker because I knew that there was more going on on planet Earth than they were telling me in Sunday school. And in fact, by that time, I think I had actually been expelled from Sunday school because I kept asking questions and saying, that doesn't make sense. And so much to my father's humiliation, I was expelled from Sunday school. And so it really didn't take until I was probably in high school. And by the time I was a junior in high school, I was going to seances. When other girls were sneaking out of the house to go on dates with boys, I was going out, I was sneaking out to go to seances. So I was a little different, as you can imagine. And basically, once I got out on my own, I kind of read everything I could find about metaphysics and spirituality and trying to figure out the secret of what was going on and how had I seen my mother on the night she died and all of that. So fortunately, I had read Raymond Moody's book and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Ken Ring had a book out, I think, at that time. And so I knew about near-death experiences. Now, by that time, this was in the early 70s, and I'm trying to, get out into the world, and my big ideas of being a, Washington Post reporter, and instead got offered a job as a coffee girl. And it just sort of wasn't easy, especially if you didn't have an advanced degree. And so by the time I was in my mid-30s, I kind of felt like a failure because I hadn't accomplished the intellectual and career goals that I had, and I hadn't managed to do any of the things society said I was supposed to do, like get married and have children, that kind of thing. In fact, I really didn't date a lot because I think people thought I was weird because I would pluck things out of their mind and they'd look at me like, how did you know that? And I didn't know how I knew it. I just knew stuff about people. And so I guess I was feeling pretty down on myself and not feeling like I had a direction. I mean, I had a job, I had a good job, and it wasn't what I really wanted to do, but it was a good job and it supported me. But I just felt stagnant and lost at that point, I think. And out of when I grew up, my father was very critical, very harsh, and I internalized all of it. So I had virtually no self-esteem. And so as I adopted the method of comedy at the time, which was sarcasm. And I was great at sarcasm because I was psychic. And I could go for the jugular without even knowing it. One snappy comeback to somebody and, they'd just crumble, And I just thought, I was being funny, I was being sophisticated, I was being cool, but it was all out of a lack of self-esteem. So Columbus Day of 1985, I was in my mid-30s, and I had had a weekend of binge watching movies, and I had taken the movies back to the Blockbuster store. And I was going down the road to the grocery store, and I had a head-on collision in the car. I saw the car coming the other way, and then at the last minute in an intersection, he came over into my lane, and I had enough time to realize he was going to hit me, but no time to do anything about it. And I didn't feel any impact. I didn't feel any pain, nothing. But the next thing I knew, I was looking down at the top of my car from maybe 12, 15 feet up. And it took me a minute to figure out what I was looking at. It's like, wait a minute, where am I and what am I doing? And what's that? What is that? And I realized I was looking at my car. And then I realized I was looking at my car. And it was like, okay, but I'm not in my car. And I was in my car a minute ago. And I started to feel really expanded, really big, like I had been, constrained for a long, long time. And then suddenly I was loose. And it was like this giant breath of relief at how that felt. And I could see in every direction. And I watched the other driver walk over and look in my car window. And I thought, isn't that nice? He's checking to see if I'm okay. And he turned my headlights off. And I thought, well, that's odd. And I'll tell you now what happened because I always forget. So I was in a contributory negligence state, and he was trying to blame the accident on me for having driving without my headlights on. I did end up having to go to court, and it all worked out. The charges got dropped because he did not show up. So it became hearsay because I said my lights had been on. There was nobody there to say that they weren't. So, but I still had to go through that. But anyway, I didn't know that at the time. I just thought it was curious. And at that point, I wasn't curious anymore because I thought, shouldn't there be a tunnel of light somewhere? And as soon as I thought that, it sort of came in from over here, like with a whoosh. And I heard it and felt it at about the same time. And the feeling was just this sublime, sweet energy that I didn't think I had felt before, but at the same time, it felt very familiar and something that I really liked, and I wanted more of it. So I started moving toward that, and I didn't really have to try because it was kind of pulling me. And it pulled me in, and the deeper I got into the tunnel, the brighter this light was, and the stronger this amazing energy was. And as I went through, I felt like all of the cares and worries of my life were just, falling away. I was leaving them behind, and they were gone. And I was totally unburdened. And so I got to the end of the tunnel, and it was this white environment. And if I had had actual eyes, I think it would have hurt because it was really white. But I felt like I was bathing in this energy and of love and peace and joy. And it just felt so good. And it felt like this is where I belong. This is where I should have been all along. That other place where I was just wrong. I don't know how I ended up there, but now I'm back where I belong. And it was kind of like I was, when a wave at the beach comes up on the beach and then rolls back out, and it sometimes leaves little pockets of water in the sand. I felt like I had been, a drop of water or a little pocket of water that had been left in this, dry, hostile, hot environment where I didn't belong. And then this wave had come back and grabbed me and brought me back to the ocean where I belonged. It was on one hand, it was what I was made of. And on the other hand, like I was part of it, but at the same time I was individual. And I would have been content to just stay there forever, just like that. And then I heard a bunch of people, and I looked over, and there were a bunch of people. And must have been like 50 or 100 people, and they were all like, "Hi, how are you? How are you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, look at you." And of course, the first person I saw was my adoptive mother. And she was so happy to see me. My grandparents were there, a couple of uncles and aunts, and it was just so nice to see everybody. And they were saying, we're so proud of you. We've watched over you every single day. And, we rejoiced in your triumphs with you. And when you were despairing and upset, we were there with our arms around you. And we're just so proud of you. And so I immediately kicked into judgment mode. And it was like, well, how could you be proud of me? I haven't done anything, haven't accomplished anything. And I was going to do all of these great things and nothing happened, and I just feel totally stuck. And they said, no, you got up every single day and put, one foot in front of the other. And you always did your best. And you always kept your sense of humor, no matter how hard it got. And you helped other people. And you were kind and generous. And I'm like, yeah, but I never got married. I never had kids. I never really have a career. I have a job. I don't have a career. I can barely support myself. And, is that going to be the rest of my life? Oh my God, what's the point? And he said, we're just so happy to see you. And we're so proud of you. So about that time, I started noticing other people. And I saw this man and I knew him immediately. I knew exactly who he was, but I had never met him on this planet. I had never met him during this life, but I knew exactly who he was. And he was my biological father. And he was there with his parents. And I was like, oh my God, how do I know you? And then I realized that my adoptive mother and my other family, the adoptive family members knew them. And I realized, we all knew each other. We had all planned this. We had all worked it out. And I had heard, the idea that we create our lives, that we form a blueprint before we're born of what our lives are going to be like. And there it was. It was like, oh my God, there was a plan A and a plan B. There were probably other plans too, but there was at least a plan A and a plan B, because if my biological mother had decided to keep me, it would have been a different plan. I thought that's a little mind-boggling. And I pondered that for a while, and I have to skip forward a little bit, because 13 years later, I found my birth family. By that time, my birth mother had also passed, but I found a brother, and he showed me pictures of my biological father and his parents, and there they were, the same people I saw during my NDE. What I also found out was that my biological father died 2 years later after my adoptive mother died. So if I had stayed with my biological parents, I would have lost a parent at a young age, at 14 rather than 12. And I was gobsmacked because it's like, obviously, if we planned this, I wanted to experience what that would be like. I couldn't imagine why. Apparently wanted to experience it. It's like, okay. So about that time, it felt like we talked forever, but at some point, I thought, I'm really I don't like this all white light environment because on planet Earth we're used to depth and color and and three dimensions. And so I thought I really wish this looked more like a landscape or something. And when I thought that, it was like the scene just suddenly changed. As if, a hand with finger paints or something came across and just painted this landscape. And so suddenly I was looking at this, like a park-like setting with some rolling hills and trees and bushes and flowers and butterflies and birds and animals. All these dogs and cats were running around, and all of the animals that I had had as a child and even as a young adult were there and came over to see me, and that was really nice. And they were doing fine. They were all young and running around and having a great time. So that was really cool. And I also started to think it's really nice that I'm seeing these people, but I think I'm supposed to see somebody else. But I didn't know who it was. So I saw this kind of pathway that went down into some woods, and I followed that. And I walked around, and meanwhile, the colors were colors that we don't see here on planet Earth. They were so rich, and everything was so alive. And the flowers were huge and amazing colors, and the birds and the butterflies and the trees were talking, and everything was just alive and beautiful. And again, I felt like, I just kind of wandered through there, and it took hundreds of years because I just communed with everything. And I finally walked, across there was a little stream with a little bridge, and I walked across that, and I walked into a clearing, and there was this kind of a gazebo structure over on a slight hill in the distance. And I walked over to that, and as I approached it, I could see that there were like people in there. And so I went in, and there were these 12 beings of light, and they were very tall, like 12 to 15 feet, and maybe 15's a little high, but pretty tall. I'm 5'5", so it's anything over 7 feet is really tall for me. So but they weren't scary. They were, just beings. What I recalled, it was beings of light, and they knew me better than the human relatives, or the dead relatives I had seen when I got there. And they seemed very, very familiar to me. I mean, I just knew, like, I had known them forever and ever and ever. And old friends and dear counselors was the feeling. And they just oozed this love, this love and total acceptance. And they just regarded me. I was standing like in the middle of the circle, and they just regarded me. And again, I started to go into self-judgment mode of, oh God, because I could feel that they could see, they knew everything about me. They knew everything I had thought, everything I had said, everything I had done, everything I had not done in my whole life. And I kept coming up with these memories of things that it's like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't done that, And but it didn't matter because I could tell that it wasn't that they loved me in spite of those things. It was they loved me almost because of those things. They loved every part of me. And they didn't see flaws and they didn't see, bad things or horrible mistakes or anything like that. They just loved me. And which in itself felt extremely uncomfortable. Especially if you've been raised in criticism. And, I mean, I had rejection after rejection after rejection my whole life. Somehow I was never good enough, or I was never the right person, or I was never something. And so to be just regarded with such love and acceptance and benevolence, it at first, I mean, and we again, I felt like I stood there 100 years, I guess, until I got used to it. Because slowly I started to feel comfortable being enveloped with that love. And again, I could have stayed there forever, just basking in that, because it's not something that we get here. And at some point I said, what the heck was that? That is a nasty place. It's like, what was the reason for that? What was the point of having that life? That's ridiculous. And I mean, what is the point of humanity at all if we're going to go through all of that stuff? And so they started to show me. And it was as if there were suddenly, like, big widescreen TVs all over the place. And I could see like the beginning of humanity, and as humanity progressed, and as humanity progressed, I could see myself in these different lives and who I was and things that I did and things that I didn't do, and these different lifetimes. And I was male and female, and rich and poor, and everything in between. And then they showed me this life. And I said, yeah, okay, but so, yeah, what's the point still? I guess we learn and grow, and, that's great, but wow, it's hard. And I said, are we going anywhere? It doesn't look like we're going anywhere, or anywhere good anyway. And so they showed me, where humanity is going to go, to the golden age. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, if it's going to end up like that, that would maybe make it worthwhile. But what about my life? What was that about? I didn't accomplish anything. And I said, why would I have created that life, especially, my childhood, and early life of rejection and criticism, and, just total lack of validation or acceptance. And they said, well, because of things you want to do later in your life, you were determined to master self-love. You had tried for several lifetimes and you've made headway, but self-love is a hard one, and most people can't do it in 1 or 2 lives. And you were determined because you knew that you would not be able to do what you want to do at the end of, later in this life, if you didn't master it. So you were determined that you were going to master it or die trying. And I said, it almost killed me. And they said, almost? And I'm like, okay, yeah, easy for you to say. You know, you weren't down there. You weren't experiencing all of this stuff. And I said, but if I wanted to learn self-love, wouldn't I have put myself in a family that loved me and accepted me and told me how, wonderful and smart I was and I could accomplish anything and that kind of stuff? And they said, no, because then you would have always been looking for that kind of validation and acceptance from outside yourself. But once you have self-love, it's inside you and nobody can ever take it away. And I said, well, did I do it? And they said, yes. You didn't master all the nuances, but you did it. And they showed me the moment in my teens when my father was berating me and accusing me of all this stuff and being all this stuff. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not any of those things. I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm generous, I'm a good person. How can you think these things about me? And they said, in that moment, the spark of self-love was ignited. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But you know what? I'm not going back there. And you can't make me, because people are mean. It's nasty. You can't accomplish anything. It's like walking through hip deep molasses trying to get anything done. It's just awful. And I'm not going back. I might go back when we get to that golden age thing, but I'm not going back now. And they said, that's fine. You don't have to. You accomplished the main lesson that you wanted to learn in this life. And I'm like, okay, good. I'm ready to stay here. And they said, but let us show you what you could accomplish if you go back. And the next minute I woke up in the emergency room and a traffic officer walked over and handed me a ticket for driving with my headlights off. And I was like, I looked around and I said, why am I here? And the nurse came over and said, you've been in a car accident. You're in the hospital. And I said, no, why am I here? Because I really wasn't talking to her. And I was mad. I really was mad because I was not going to come back. And coming back, I mean, remember, I'd felt so expanded. Coming back into a body after that, I felt like trying to put an elephant back into a Coca-Cola can. I mean, this tiny little part of me fit in the Coca-Cola can. And the rest of me, I guess, was up there. But it just I felt like constrained. I was angry. I couldn't remember what they showed me that I could accomplish. I knew I had changed my mind, but I didn't know, I couldn't remember why. I was not tricked. I was not sent back. I had changed my mind based on what they showed me, and I could not remember what it was. And I was really mad. And I stayed mad. And after a couple of years of my life being tossed upside down, it's like they take you take your life and you put it in a blender. And have you ever turned on a blender without putting the top on and everything goes flying up on the ceiling? That's the way my life was. I left my job. I lost my friends. Everything that I had used before to identify myself was gone. And I knew that I had kind of been given a timeout with the principal because they had said, Ellen, you're kind of on the wrong track. But of course, at that moment, I didn't think I was coming back. So it's like, okay, I'm on the wrong track, but I don't know what track I'm supposed to be on. Except I knew that sarcasm was a no-no. Sarcasm, I realized, was extremely hostile. So I had to start changing my personality, and I moved into a deep depression that lasted for years. And I think that was all probably because I was resisting being back. And I kept, having information kept coming to me. So I was getting more and more information, but I was having to process all this stuff. And I was very lucky because I found a woman who was channeling, and I started taking channeled classes. And the channeled guides really, really helped me to wrap my head around what had happened and to integrate what had happened. And the most curious thing that happened afterwards was that people started giving me things with lions. Now, I had a cat, but I had never collected anything related to lions or cats. And it was like people started throwing stuff at me, basically. I got jewelry, I got belts, I got statues, I got books, I got all kinds of stuff about lions. And I'm like, what are these lions? And then at one point, I started realizing that I was feeling energy in a different way. And I would walk down the street and I would feel like there was something brushing up against my legs, kind of like when a dog brushes up against your legs. And these were pretty big. These were like thigh high. But I couldn't see them except kind of like you would see ice sculpture. I couldn't see them as fully formed, and they were kind of transparent, but I could kind of see an outline. And they weren't dogs, they were lions, and there were a bunch of them. I thought, this is really weird. And I went to a near-death study group one day in the mid-90s, and I walked in, and the leader said, oh, here's Ellen and her lions. And I stopped dead and I said, wait a minute, you can see them? I can't see them, but you can see them? And he says, yeah, there's like 12 of them. And it's like, okay. So here I am. I have people throwing lions at me. I've got disincarnate lions walking around with me. I'm going nuts. And I walked into a bookshop or a card shop, and I saw there was a rack with cards for, each zodiac sign. And I saw the one for Leo. And I looked at it and my knees buckled and I went straight down on the floor. And I went, oh my God, that's what they looked like. And in my head, it was as if those beings that I met during my NDE had been like wearing sheets over themselves, and somebody had just pulled the sheets down, and I could remember what they looked like. And they were lion people. And up until that point, the whole idea of ETs were, that was like people were crazy if they thought about ETs, as far as I was concerned. It's like this was not anything on my radar at all. And yet here I was looking at this picture, and I was like, okay, those are the beings that I met and talked to, and those are the beings that I knew better than my relatives. And those are the beings that told me that I was more kin to them than my relatives. And I was like, what do I do with this information? So it took me, I thought, God, they spent 5 years softening me up. with all this lion stuff being thrown at me. And I was still, I mean, it took me several years before I could even like, oh my God, what does that mean? And in the course of that, I realized that I had been in communication with these guides, but at the time, it was just they were just my guides. They were the beings that I met during my NDE, but I didn't know that they were lion people, and I didn't know there were lion people. And what do you do with that? So it took me a long time to wrap my head around that and get used to the idea that, oh, not only am I talking to lion people, apparently I am one. And I'm down here masquerading as a human, which probably answers a lot of questions about why I didn't do human very well. Uh, so, so that's my story, and it's taken me, all this time. Some people say it takes 10 years to integrate a near-death experience, and I would say no, that's not true, because you integrate it for the rest of your life, because it's like any spiritual experience. You go through the layers and you're processing layers, and you integrate one layer, and then another layer pops up for you to integrate, and it's like, oh, I thought I dealt with that, but apparently not. So I'm still dealing with it. And recently, I'd say in the last 5 years, the biggest message that my lion people guides have wanted me to share is the lesson that I came to this life to master, which is self-love. Because most of us are taught from the womb that we are flawed beings that have to behave and act certain ways in order to be acceptable, and in order to be loved, and to be worthy and deserving of anything, which is totally not true, because we are divine, powerful beings. And it's time for us to step into that and recognize who we are and claim it and love ourselves. And what I've learned is the more we love ourselves and respect ourselves and care for ourselves, not in a selfish, egoistic way, but respecting ourselves, that we deserve to be respected and treated well. And we don't deserve to be in toxic situations. We deserve to be, treated well and supported. And the more I have done that, and the more I've done that and moved into that, the less I have felt the need to control everything. And the less I try to control everything, and I get my spoon out of the spokes, and I trust the universe to assist me, my life has completely turned around and become almost magical. Because when I try to make things happen, I goof it up. But if I hand it over to the universe and say, do it, and then call me when it's ready, magical things come to me. So my biggest lesson that I can pass along to anyone is to recognize who you are, and to love yourself, and to trust the universe to always have your back and support and protect you and love you, because we are all greatly loved. And that's my story.
Oh my goodness. Whoa.
I had some help with that. I got to tell you, I've got chills too. And that always happens when the lion people are like feeding me lines.
Oh man, I was feeling every bit of your story as you were sharing it, and when you were talking about all that love that you felt from them. Um wow, it brings back memories for me. too. So thank you. So, and I'm like reliving it along with you, as you're sharing it. So thank you. So beautiful, so beautiful. And isn't it funny how you know, when you were over there, you couldn't really see them, or you don't have a memory of seeing them
Right.
that way, right? So were they more like light beings that you were seeing? Like these very tall light beings? Like what do you remember seeing, or do you remember having a visual of them at all?
Well, I think the thing is, when you experience so much during an NDE, and you only remember like a small percentage of it
Right,
when you come back, and over the years, different things trigger different memories, and more of it comes back. But I'm guessing that when I was there, I saw them for who they were. But when I came back, because the whole idea of ETs or any other kinds of beings other than humans just, was ridiculous in my head at that point. I mean, in 1985, it wasn't a thing except in science fiction,
right,
and I think my mind would not let me see what they looked like
right.
until that whole like 5-year process of like softening me up.
Yeah, yeah, getting you ready for it.
Yeah.
And I like how you described, you started to feel them around your calf
Yes.
or your thigh muscle, right? But it was like they were rubbing up against you, but then when you started to see them, it was almost like they were translucent beings, like ice sculptures, you described it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
couldn't
they
really see
they could
them.
change size. I could feel them sometimes change size. One time I was on a trip to I was in Belfast, and I was walking alone at night, and I didn't feel scared, but there was something I could feel them with me. And I saw this guy coming toward me on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden I felt him get big. And the guy kind of gave me a funny look, and he suddenly crossed to the other side of the road.
They are fierce protectors, absolutely fierce protectors. Call in the lion beings, guys, if you ever get scared or if you're ever have
Absolutely.
wacky, wonky energies that you feel around you, if you have a bad dream at night, call in the lion beings and they will come right away and they are here to protect us. So beautiful. Thank you so much. I love, love, love that story.
I
Um,
have the picture if you'd like to see it.
oh yes, absolutely.
I have to get it on my phone here. Um, yeah, they adore humanity. They are the guardians. To me, they are the guardians of humanity and the ancient wisdom. And they really see humanity like their children, and they want to do whatever they can to help us and protect us. And they love to be called on. So
Yes.
this is, I hope I can get it so that you can see the picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh my god, I love that.
So this is the picture.
Oh,
It's by an artist called Susan Sedon Boulay, who she passed over a few years ago. But that was, I looked at that, and you see the hands,
mm,
the lion head with the mane. This is actually a female, but a lion head with the mane and the hands holding the orb and scepter. And I
yeah,
saw that picture and I just went straight down on my knees.
yeah. That was a moment, right? That was meant just for you to understand and connect.
Absolutely.
Mm,
It was the trigger.
yeah,
Sort of
beautiful.
like, okay, she's ready now.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And I love your message about self-love. And that's really, I love the way you explained it, that you asked really good questions when you were there. You asked them why, like, why would you plan this kind of life for yourself? And like, if you were trying to learn about self-love, why wouldn't you be in a loving family that was telling
I
you
know,
who
man.
you are, right? It actually would do the opposite effect. It would actually
Right.
make you look outside of yourself instead of being able to look within yourself. So that's really, really important for people, I think, to know. Um, all right. So I am going to call on whoever would like to ask questions or have comments or anything you'd like to say to Ellyn and her beautiful share. So if you can raise your hand, and all right, we're going to bring Andrew in. All right. Hey, Andrew.
Hi,
Hi,
Andrew.
Catherine. Hi, Ellen. Thank you. That was so wonderful. I have never laughed so much hearing
Oh,
someone's NDE. That was just so, I really appreciate your sense of humor and just the way you tell the story. Found myself cracking up a number of times, and it was wonderful. Um, and so the question I have is, when you were with them, the last thing you remembered hearing was, let us show you what's going to be better. And then you woke up. And I just
mhm.
wondered if you ever were able to remember what they told you and what actually did get better in your life. And I also just want to validate, I love that moment when they said, they showed you the moment that you were being, verbally mistreated by your father, and you were validating yourself.
Mhm.
And they said that was the moment where you claimed your self-love. I love those moments because it's the things where, like, we're not even aware of it,
Right.
but it's this huge thing in the universe, in the bigger scheme. So I really, really appreciated that also. So anyway, excuse me, those were the questions I had. That if you remembered what they told you would get better and what actually did get better.
Well, they actually told me the things that I could accomplish if I went back. And I did not. I had no idea. I mean, most people who come back from an NDE will tell you, I know I came back for a purpose or a mission, and I can't remember what it was. And it drives us crazy for years. And I think part of that is because most of us think in terms of the mission or the purpose is to do something, um, like a job description. And so I went through a whole bunch of different things. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to write a book. So I wrote a book, a fantasy novel that had information that I learned about life, from my NDE. That didn't go anywhere. And then I learned Reiki and later reconnective healing. And I kept thinking, well, why do I feel pushed to do these things and then nothing happens? It's like I'm still accomplishing nothing. It's like this is ridiculous. And I think I don't even know what it was. I think I finally just surrendered, which is like the hardest thing for most of us to do. And, I went through so many dark nights of the soul where I felt like I was at the bottom of the pit, and it was like, I just don't even know what to do. You have to help me. I can't stand this anymore. I give up. And I mean, I was taught, I grew up when it was like, you cannot be a quitter. If you start something, you have to finish it. And I'm like, I don't care. I give up. And I think that was the turning point. But I can tell you, what I came to understand slowly was that the mission is to be who we are, to step into our own beautiful essence and to be that in the world. And it's like, we're in this big beautiful symphony, and if everybody wants to be an oboe, it's not going to be a good symphony. But every one of us brought in a note to play. But our society tells us to be like everybody else. So the point is to figure out, to become our own authentic self and to walk through life vibrating in our own essence. And then it doesn't really matter what we're doing. If we're grocery shopping, we're spreading that vibration. if we're talking to, an auditorium full of people or whatever we're doing, if we're collecting trash, it doesn't matter. I think I do know now, I've had that aha moment a few times of, oh, this is what I was going to be doing. I was going to be talking about my experience and what I learned. But if you had told me in 1985, I would break out in hives doing public speaking. If I had woken up and thought I'm going to be doing public speaking and going all across the country talking about my near-death experience, I would have said, "Are you insane?" I am not doing that. So that's the thing. We don't necessarily know. It's sort of like, my guides put a bag over my head, and sometimes they just give me 1 or 2 steps ahead, because if I see down the path, I'm going to run in the opposite direction.
Can I just share a quick little story? When I went through my spiritual awakening, I had a similar experience where I was asking, what am I going to be doing? What am I going to be doing? And they said, they said, well, and I said, am I going to be helping? Am I going to be helping with this or that? Well, and then I finally asked them enough times, and they go, well, you're going to be speaking, right? You're going to be speaking to groups. And same thing. I was like, humana. I got all scared.
Yeah.
And they said, don't worry, your grandpa's going to help you with that.
Aw.
He'll take away the fear and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. But that too was my worst fear. And Dolores Cannon, who was a teacher of mine,
Oh,
UHHT, yeah, she used to say, and I love this statement from her: you wouldn't give a baby a steak, right? So think about it, right? That's how,
right.
right? When we're in front of them, we're like these little children.
Mm-hmm.
We're not evolved yet. We're not ready to, do what we're going to be doing in the future. So they don't want to tell us too much, because it might scare us off our path. And like you said, we would run the other way, right? So they only give us little
Right.
bits, little bite-sized bits.
Right. Right.
So
So
Well,
did I
thank you.
answer your
Thank
question?
you very much. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Thank you.
really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. It's very uplifting.
thank you, Andrew. All right. So now we have I I'm sorry, I want to say it right. Ayana. Is that how you say your
Yes, yes, Ayana.
Ayana? Okay, hold on a second. Do you want to put your camera on, or do you want to come in, or you want to stay?
Yeah, I could put my camera on.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Dark, but
All right.
hi.
I am going to bring you in. Hold on a second. Okay.
Okay.
Here she is.
Are.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
good. I have a question, Ellyn. You mentioned that after you had your near-death experience, that you experienced a lot of depression. And I would like to know, how or what did you do to shift or release those emotions of depression?
Oh, I wish I could tell you one thing. Yeah, it was bad. I mean, I would go to sleep at night praying to die, and then wake up every morning, depressed and disappointed. And I did a lot of therapy. I did, antidepressants. I did I was going to the channeled classes for years off and on, and I think that helped a lot. My sense of it was that most of my depression was based on my resistance to being back here. And when I finally gave up that resistance, and kind of probably also gave up the idea that I could control anything. After my several really bad dark nights of the soul. I mean, I had one that was so bad that my friends said later they had me on suicide watch. And it was like, well, I was never going to kill myself. I was just praying to die. Um, but I think that was it. I had to go through. It was the, I guess, kind of breaking the hold of the ego, of the expectations, and the things should be a certain way, and I should be able to make this happen. And I mean, half of the times the stuff that I thought I wanted, if I had gotten it, I got saved from myself so many times because I did not get the things that I wanted. And then, later I would look back and say, oh my God, thank you for saving me. But it was a process. I wish I could tell you there was one thing that I did that really worked, but I can't, because it was a gradual thing. And part of it was, I think I just realized it's like, well, wanting to die is not going to make it happen. So I might as well just, since I'm still here, I better get on with it, kind of thing. And, maybe I just got bored from from being depressed. I mean, I do still have a tendency to, I can move into depression, and I know all of the signs to look for. Um, and when that happens, I'll like spend more time in nature and take more walks, and call my friends and that kind of thing. I have coping things. But I'm sorry, people do ask me, it's like, how do you get out of the depression? And it's like,
I, yeah,
everybody has a different way.
the reason why I asked that is because I know that we're in different age groups, but when I've never experienced a near-death experience, but I've experienced a lot of spiritual events as a user of psychedelics.
Mhm.
And and one of those moments when I was on the psychedelics was this battle with myself about, they were asking, do you want to stay or do you want to go?
Oh, okay.
And when you were saying that you don't want to go back to that place, the people down there are so mean, I remember I was so upset. I mean, I was literally like punching things and pushing things over, because I was like, they have like people on earth, like they don't have no gratitude, they don't care. And it's like you're using so much of your energy and it doesn't matter why I'm even here in the first place. But at the
Nope.
same time, there was this deep sense of guilt and not wanting to give up. I was thinking, like, if I give up, I mean, I could be so close to the end, and then you give up. And then when you go back, then you'll be like, damn, why did I give up? So that was something that I experienced too, which I could totally relate to. But while I was experiencing these things, I was going through some heavy, heavy, dense emotions of sadness and depression. And some of the things that did help me is like being out in nature
Mhm.
and listening to different frequencies of music, doing meditation, and psychedelics help me to release a lot of dense energies. So
Yeah. There's a lot more opportunities for things like that now.
yeah, and the other thing too was like learning about Dolores Cannon. I like bought like so many of her
Yep.
books, and
Yep.
which helped me to learn more about myself, learning like beyond quantum healing. So it's like very similar experiences that I think we all have, and we are all shedding like the same emotions collectively.
Right.
Yeah, and I know they speak a lot about dark nights of the soul, and I always used to say to myself, it's not just one dark night of the soul. There's
No.
many, 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 many dark nights of the soul where you keep going over. Even sometimes when you feel like you shed this experience or this emotion or something that you experienced, it would come up again and be like, man, I
Cycles
thought I already,
back.
yeah,
Yep.
I was
Yep.
like, I thought I already dealt with that. Why is that coming back again? So I totally get that. And one of the things that I struggle with though is being able to relate to people. I find it so
Yeah,
hard to meet people that understand me. I feel like a oddball out, like
yeah,
not being able to relate to people or people not seeing things in the way that I see it. Like, but why is that like that? Or why do you do that? Or why is this way? But it doesn't make any sense. Why do people treat each other like this? So my mindset is just so
yeah,
different from normal, regular people that it's just so hard to relate. So I totally could relate to your story, even though we have totally different experience, but similar
right,
emotional reactions and like, why am I here? And it's the same thing in terms of you saying you wanted to die. I mean, it's so lucky that you didn't try, but I've tried it. I've tried it more than one time to leave
oh
my
my,
body. And there was a time, and I realized too that I wasn't accept being here in the physical. I was just so high up in like the other planes that I wasn't able to anchor within my physical body and accept being here.
mm-hmm,
So this year, last year, is when I just start now accepting being in the physical and like grounding myself in the
yeah,
physical. So yeah, I totally understand your
yeah.
experience. So thank you for
Well,
sharing
and
that.
you know,
Yeah.
those feelings, I think, you know, for people who are sensitive
Hmm.
and empaths, it's very hard to be here. And
Hmm.
I think it's a learning process of, I think first, one of the things we have to do is grieve. We, you know, we have to grieve for the world and humanity about the way we wish it would be. I mean, when my father died, my adoptive father died, on one hand, I felt relieved,
Hmm.
but then I went through this grief and I realized I was grieving for the father I wish I had had. And I think those of us who are sensitive grieve for the humanity that we wish we could see on the planet.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard for us. And again, stepping into who we are and moving into self-love and self-care, we
Mhm.
have to learn how to, you know, be in the world but not of it. How to
Mhm.
keep shining our light without letting them bring us down.
Yes, but like you said though, it's very difficult
It's
because
it's hard.
what what I realized during my journey that same as what you said, I could relate to you in so many ways, it's ridiculous. About about how my identity was tied in with what I do because I was a nurse. And then when that stopped being a nurse, I didn't know who I was anymore. There was nothing for
Yep,
me to hold on to like, so I felt useless, worthless, like, why am I here? I'm not doing anything. I'm not helping anyone. So why am I even here? So I to that, I could relate in that way and feeling like the heaviness of the planet, feeling the weight and the sadness of people and wanting to like, sometimes I want to like shake people like I wish you would just know what I know and know that you're loved and know I just wish I could just impart this on you so much. So much. But this is that way I was like taking on their heaviness, taking on the burden.
right,
I feel like I need to save people, but no one needs to be saved.
right,
Um, yeah, also I realized that just being present, you actually are doing something because it's the energy, it's your essence that you bring
exactly.
here.
Mhm.
And just being present is what actually help raising the vibration of the planet and working on
Yep,
me is what helps other people, not helping trying to
perfect.
save other people. It's so
Yeah,
yeah, so it's amazing when you start to shift your vibration, shift your mood, shift your thoughts. You see things in such a different, such a beautiful you see how beautiful the creator is and see that everything is for purpose and serve a purpose.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and just to remain neutral and not trying to choose sides, just be balanced. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for everything.
You're welcome.
Beautiful and so relevant. And everybody, I think everybody can relate to everything that you just shared with us. So thank you. And come back because we are your people. I'm
It's
telling
Yes,
you.
important to
yes,
find the
yes, yes.
tribe. It is
Yeah.
important to
Yeah.
find, yeah.
It is, it matters. You have no idea how it matters. It's good to have a place where you could go and share how you're feeling and share your experience and know that people would understand you and what you're saying,
That's
you know,
right.
yeah.
All
Mhm.
right. Well, thank you so much. All right. I'm gonna call Karen in now. So here we go. Hello, Karen. Let me bring you in.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Hi,
Karen.
Karen.
Hi. Um, I'm just a little curious. I really relate to what Ayana was saying too, because I've always been different also, and people are like, "What's she doing?" You know. But anyway, um, I wanted to ask you whether these creatures have their own planet, maybe. I mean, these cats that are, you know, your friends, and I've always liked cats, and they seem to like me. But I just wanted to know whether they have a place that they are themselves and exist. You know, I was just curious about that, whether they have a background for themselves, or whether they just come here and accompany us, or what happens with that, if you know anything?
Well, I feel almost embarrassed to say that I really don't don't know a lot about them. Um, it,
Yeah.
I kind of felt like I didn't need to.
Uh-huh.
I've had, there's not a lot of information out. There's more now. Apparently, a lot of the feline races are called Lyrans, and they were from the planet Lyra, which apparently no longer exists. And,
From Sirius B also. I think they're
oh,
from
okay,
different
okay, yeah.
different
I
places.
don't, I read a book years and years ago by Murray Hope called The Lion People, and it was supposedly channeled, and I read it, and some of it rang true and some of it didn't. But there was never much information. And my sense of it, at least the ones that I'm working with, they really, they aren't incarnate anywhere right now.
They're not physical beings. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're very highly evolved,
Yeah.
and don't really confine themselves to a planet.
Mm-hmm.
So they can go wherever they feel they need it or they want
Yeah.
to go and do whatever they're going to do. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
And what I
So,
have found also, because I have a lot of interactions with the lion being, I call them lion beings, and they're part of my higher self team, and so they're very instrumental in helping me plan my life here and my incarnation here. But
yeah.
they're kind of like I feel like, well, they come in with so much love. It like when they're around me, my heart feels like it's like buzzing with
Yeah.
Mhm.
electric, but a good buzzing, not like anything to be scared of, you know? So yeah,
Yeah.
very, very loving, and they're so evolved that they are way beyond being
Yeah.
in a body or a 3D, you know, having to be on
Right. Right.
brains
They
like
don't need that to do what they do. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're working to help the us humans to evolve and the earth
Mhm.
also to evolve.
Oh,
So they
that's
want
good.
us to also raise our frequency to
Right.
be able to be, you know, helpers for others that are coming along after us,
Oh,
which
I
I
see.
think we're all heading towards. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
And they
Yeah.
have a great sense of humor, and they want us to lighten up and not take everything so seriously.
Yes.
Right. Right. Well, I suppose the past couple of 100 years, I think, in our history have been such as you better be serious. You better straighten up. You
Oh,
better
yeah. Oh,
all that kind of, how could you do what you're doing? Do something, beneficial and do something. And we're just like, oh, okay, yeah. But it's kind of been really heavy the last few years, I think, few centuries anyway. And
well, the
yeah,
Puritan influence.
yeah,
You
yeah.
all are having way too much fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're having too much fun. You should really straighten up and, take responsibility and and it's like, yeah, yeah. You can only take so much responsibility, especially when you're not responsible for everything,
Right.
So,
Thank you,
yeah.
Karen. Thank you for asking questions. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to see if anybody else has any questions. Thank you. All right, anybody else? We have a couple of comments in the chat. Let me see. We have some thank yous. Thank you, Ellen, for sharing your story and sharing the important message of self-love and that the lion beings protect and support us. And thank you so very much for the amazing and heartwarming story. I simply loved every moment. And you expressed so well, such a fabulous storyteller. And you were born to tell this story. Being a Leo myself adds to my joy. Oh, that's
Mhm.
that was from So. All right. And Carrie says magical things come when you recognize who you are and
Yeah.
trust the universe to support, protect, and provide for you. Ellyn Dye, a quote I appreciate. So thank you. Right. And other people said they really identify with everything. Super inspiring. All right. And related so much to everything that was shared. So a lot of gratitude. Um, all right. And
I do see a question.
there's one more question. Do you have anything to add about the coming golden age?
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
We're going to get there. So in 1985, I looked around and I thought, we're never going to get to the golden age. Are they crazy? And so I started studying the Mayan calendar and astrology and that kind of thing. And to me, we really are like right on the cusp of it.
Yeah.
And so many major astrological, like planetary transits are happening this year. The energies are going to change so dramatically that by August, it's going to be a whole new ball game.
Wow.
And that's because we have the three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and they affect us on deep subconscious levels. And they usually stay in a sign for about 20 years. So to have any of them change signs in any given year is unusual and huge. So we had Pluto move into Aquarius in mid-November. At the end of March, after 2 eclipses, we have Neptune moving into Aries out of Pisces. And at the end of June, we have Uranus moving from Taurus into Gemini. So in 7 months, we have all 3 of those major, huge, influential, energetic planets changing signs. It's like one tsunami of energy after another coming in. And I think part of the reason everything in the world seems so, chaotic and crazy is because people are feeling these shifts already. It's like something's changing. We don't know what. We're worried because we're afraid of the unknown, and we want to hold on to the old because even if we hated it, at least we knew what it was. So that's what's happening right now. And, we're watching the existing things from the Piscean age crumble. and they have to crumble. So don't get upset when you see them crumbling because it's sort of like you can't take that baggage with you into the new age. So we are going to have, I feel like this is the year 2025 is, you know, the shift point. And things will change a lot. And that's why it is so chaotic and upsetting right now. And the best thing is to just not get sucked into the drama, but just pay attention to yourself and create heaven on earth in your own life right now, because all of these energies are going to help manifest things. So, you know, if we focus on what you want. I have, you know, people are like, oh, I'm so upset about the wildfires in LA. And it's like, don't focus on the fire, focus on rain. You know, it's like, which do you want? Put your attention on what you want.
What you
And
focus on.
the more we do that, the more we are going to create the life that we want. And because the golden age starts one soul at a time, one heart at a time. So as each of us create the golden age for ourselves, that will ripple out. And we have a lot of planetary energy helping us this year.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. I feel like we are, and I always say we're in the birthing process right now. We're
Yes.
getting into that where you
The
go into
painful part.
transition. All you women out there that have been through it, you know what I'm talking about. That transition phase. That's the worst.
Just keep going.
You can't even breathe at that point. Yeah, and it comes one after another. There's not even a second in between, you know. So that's
Yep.
where we're at right now, and man, it's going to be worth it once it's birthed, and once we're in that new beautiful age, that new day, you know, and that we're all part of this. So we're bringing it forward, and we are being who we want to be in the world and what we want the world to be, and focusing on ourselves and what we love to do, and what brings us joy and what brings others joy too in our immediate circle. And so that's all we can do. So, all right. So let's see if there's any other hands up. I see Aaron. Hold on, Aaron. I'm going to bring you in. Here we go. Hello.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for bringing me in. And thank you, Ellen, as well. That was amazingly inspiring.
Thank you.
Really, really. I'm just in with relation to what's being said, and I'm getting more sensitive, and my heart is warming daily. Things you said, I just made some very brief notes because I wanted to pick up and ask about them. You mentioned it can drive us almost mad finding our mission, and I think that's a little bit of what I've recently been going through. And you mentioned picking things out of people's brains when you were younger. I found that very prominent in my life a lot, and people would frequently say, "How do you know that?" or "You have no evidence for that," and stuff. And I love the way you openly talk about it now being a psi ability. I'd love to have that confidence in me. And then there was a vision where you talked about being part of the scene, but you were still in it. And that's predominantly what I would like you to elaborate on, because sometimes when I'm talking about or hearing other people's experiences, I can get caught up in the memory of something and it loses my train of thought. I don't have the power of recollection that I see in you and find rather envious.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure what your question.
Oh, sorry, I elaborated a little bit at the end of my question. It kind of reminds me of Carlos Castaneda's or something, when we go into the world beyond the senses and we can see that the person in front of us is in fact a person. We're meeting somebody, but maybe if I went to rub my hands together, they wouldn't be in front of me because I am both in the scene and have a body in the scene as well. If that makes sense. It kind of confuses me every time I try to analyze it a little bit, but when you mentioned it, it kind of brought me back to what I've previously tried to describe. I'm not sure if you remember mentioning it, but I just wondered if you could elaborate on that feeling.
Well, I think, when these gifts are present, I mean, most people have psychic gifts. Most people don't use them or don't recognize that they have them. And it takes practice. I mean, sometimes I think, if I'm understanding your question, it's that, I mean, I could be talking to somebody and in my head, I'm seeing movies of how I knew that person in different lives. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Kind of being in two
Yes,
different worlds? Okay. And I had, are you in Ireland, by the way?
absolutely, I am, Ellen. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I had an amazing experience in Ireland on a trip where I found myself walking in my own footsteps from a life that was like 3,500 BC. And it involved crowning the ancient High King of Ireland at Tara and building Newgrange. But yeah, it can be extremely disconcerting when you're having those experiences of one foot in 3D and another foot in I don't know what other D it is. And the only way that I navigate that, I guess, is that when I find that happening is to ground, continually ground myself. And I can say, I mean, we can always ask our guides for help. I mean, I have said, I'm happy to have this memory, but I have to function in 3D right now too, and so help me be grounded, help me make sense of, why am I having this experience? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing of this other person? And sometimes we can say, I need to deal with this person in a professional way right now. And seeing this past relationship with this person is not helping. So, let's hold that off for a while, okay? So I guess for me it's a question of, I mean, I constantly ask for help. I mean, really, for just about everything. If I get in the car, I sit there with the steering wheel and say, okay, I have to be grounded now. Help me be grounded, because, I need to pay attention. I'm in a very heavy moving vehicle. So that's kind of my advice. I mean, you're not the only one that this happens to, so don't feel crazy. In a way, it's a gift. I figured out, I had one of those with a supervisor who came in above me at my job, and she hated me on sight. And I bent over backwards to be kind, everything else. And I kept saying, okay, you got to tell me what's going on here. This is ridiculous. And I suddenly had this little movie in my head one day when I was talking to her. And she was the overseer on the plantation. And I was the slave. And I was the slave that was very rebellious. And I realized later that I was a runaway slave. And she caught hell from the master for losing the master's property. And it's like, well, no wonder she hates my guts. If she had the whip this time, she would use it again, but, and that didn't help me create a better relationship with her, because I knew she was never going to have a good relationship with me, but at least I understood. But we have to remind our guides sometimes, and ourselves, I have to operate in the three-dimensional world right now. And this can be very helpful information, but I don't need to have it while I'm having a conversation with this person. So, it is up to us to set the parameters of our experience. And, like anything else, it just takes practice of saying, okay, when I get home, I want the full picture. Right now, stop.
Yeah, super interesting.
Tell me this story when I get home and I'm sitting on the sofa. Don't tell it to me right now. And because what I often say to them is, you haven't been in a body for a long time. You have forgotten. So, easy for you to say. So just, back off a minute. And there, it's not like, oh, I worship you. I'm like, get out of my face right now. We have to set the parameters. And it really is a gift. It really is a gift. But we have to learn how to use it and how to, set the parameters of when we get the information and how we get the information, and remind them we're in a body, you're not. This is interfering right now. Does that help?
It absolutely does, Ellyn. Yeah, most grateful. Thank you.
And I can't wait to go back to Ireland.
We can't wait to have you.
Oh, I can't hear you, Catherine.
Thank you. I said, oh, thank you, Aaron. And then I just said, any last minute questions? Anybody have anything they want to say? She so says she wished she could come to one of your comedy shows. It would be a blast. So
Oh. Do you know, sometimes I do podcasts and I laugh a lot because when I talk about my NDE, I move back into that frequency of love and it makes me giddy. So I laugh a lot. And every once in a while I get a comment of like, oh, I can't stand how this woman laughs through the whole thing, And I'm like, you're triggered for laughter? That's really sad.
exactly.
I find my sense of humor, I'm telling you, it's a lion thing. The lions have a great sense of humor. And I just found in my life that you have to laugh at stuff because otherwise you would just lie down and weep. So you have to see the absurdity of divine, powerful beings pretending to be separate, and forgetting who they are. And it's like we're down here playing blind man's bluff, and we have these blindfolds on and we're moving around, and it's kind of funny. So, at least now we're at a point where we can take the blindfolds off, which is wonderful.
That's right. Well, this has been wonderful. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything tonight. You shared so much of your journey and so much wisdom.
Oh,
And
thank you.
really, really wonderful. I know we all got so much out of it. And I think So has a question before we go. So do you want to come into the room or do you want to ask from there?
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Yes. Hi. Yeah. Just don't. I won't be on screen, but I'll ask. I can. Yeah. I just. Hi, Ellyn. Oh, I just wanted to thank you so much. I learned so much. I laughed so much. I really enjoyed this sharing. I have been so busy because my dad has been pretty ill this past few months. And so I've just been really the busy caregiver. And I don't know why yesterday I just saw Catherine's notification. I'm like, I'm going in there. I just need some energy right now. And you were exactly what I needed for today.
Great.
I'm a Leo. And so, lions, yes, anywhere that's lions, I will imagine from now on that there are lines, whether there are there or not. I'm just going to create them in my mind now. But it was so wonderful. There were parts that my dad called me for something. I had to run out of the room. I missed some parts. I'm going to go back and watch this again. But you were born to be this bright, joyful light. And I feel so blessed. And thanks, Catherine. As always, you bring in the best. Even in the darkest of times, you are always that light. So
Yes,
thank you
she is.
guys.
Yes, she is.
She is. She is. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And I'll be praying for your dad.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So I'm just looking to see if there's any other hands. All right. So yeah, so like I was saying, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And yeah, Ellyn, I think you should write a book. I don't like to say should, but
I'm working on it.
I could see you doing a book. It would be it would be so well received. People would just love it.
I
Yeah.
do write a newsletter right now. I couldn't quite get myself to start writing the book, so I started writing the newsletter, and it's free if you go on my website.
All
It's called
right.
Tunnel Vision.
Tunnel vision. Yeah. Okay.
So, but I'm working, I'm slowly
Yeah.
working on a book. I'm waiting for the energy, because I know that, I can spin my wheels if the energy isn't there yet.
Right. You'll know when it's
So,
time. You'll know
yep.
when it's time. Yeah. And I love the part in your story where all of a sudden you started getting all these gifts of different lion figurines. Like,
It was
how does that
so
just
strange. I
how does
couldn't
that just happen out of
I
nowhere?
was like, why is
It's
everybody
like,
giving me these things?
hello,
What
Ellyn.
the heck?
Hello.
I know, really. I am the slowest learner in the history of the universe.
No,
I'm telling you. It's like,
absolutely not. You were just that was your way of learning, you know? It was perfect for you. It wasn't that you were slow. It was meant to be that way.
well, but slow but thorough. Let's put it that way.
So it was perfect tonight. And thank you so much. You shared so much and it was beautiful. All right. So I just want to give a little announcement about our next meeting, which will be the first Tuesday of the month. And I believe it's the 1st of March, I think. It will be our safe space sharing group. So that'll be our next meeting. And yeah, and that's what I wanted to announce for next time. All right. So everybody have a beautiful night and thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of you being with us and I appreciate all of you who had questions or comments and put them in the chat or spoke them out loud. Love to you all. Many blessings. Bye guys.
Thank you. Much
Bye-bye.
love.
Thank you.
Bye everybody. I'm just going to do my little heart. I love those little hearts, how they all come up.
I do too.
All right. That was fantastic.